All right, couple of quick announcements before we get going with today's video. Number one, Magic Online has had some lag problems recently. Those should be fixed moving forward. The Magic Online team quickly identified the problem, isolated it, and removed it. It had to do with the rollout of some of the new visual features. They've disabled something temporarily until they can get it all figured out. So most of the visual new stuff should still be there. And then secondly, you might be able to tell already, I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to go out of order for recording for the next couple of days to just record some of the simpler to play decks, the decks that I'm, kind of very comfortable with already, to kind of alleviate things on my end while I recover. So Greg, I apologize, but your standstill deck is going to wait just a couple more days. All right. With that being said, enjoy the show, folks. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today Mav has sent me a deck list that they used to recently top for a Legacy challenge, and it is a Mono Black Beseech the Mirror Helm of Obedience deck that is very similar to a lot of things that we've played in the past, but does something very, very different. The core of this deck is exactly what you are used to. It is Dauthi Voidwalkers and Leyline of the Voids with a Helm of Obedience combo finish that allows you to just mill out your opponent for a single mana once you have Helm of Obedience in play. But this deck can also just do the Troll of Khazad-dûm reanimate thing that we know is so powerful within this format. So you have hands where you can kind of go nuts with extra mana from Ancient Tomb, but you can also just play a tempo game where you reanimate a troll and then wasteland your opponent so they don't get to play their big dumb cards and only you get to play the big dumb cards. What's unusual and interesting about Mav's build is what's going on with Karn the Great Creator. Karn the Great Creator, traditionally speaking, is a card that you want to play as a 4 of because your sideboard is often built around the card. But when Karn's bad, Karn is like terrible. It's not like Karn is okay. Karn is either instantly winning you the game on the spot in many cases, or you play it, you tutor for something, and you die on your opponent's next turn, or Karn is attacked and doesn't really do a ton. Especially if you are not like going the Grim Monolith Voltaic Key play Karn as quickly as possible route. When you are doing it in a fairer capacity, it's often a little bit underwhelming. So this deck can cheat on the number of Karns it's playing by playing Beseech the Mirror to tutor up Karn when Karn is going to be good, and in post-sideboard games when you're doing things like playing against combo decks where Karn is going to shut off all of their fast mana, you can board up on the number of Karns to be able to play it more consistently and earlier on in the game. We're not really on removal in game 1. We can maybe ping a small creature, and we can maybe play an overcosted removal spell. So generally speaking, if we need to board in removal, we will do so in the post-sideboard games to address threats from Delver and other similar decks. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into things here and see how this deck feels. I'm excited about this one. I love these mono black decks. The viewers also love them as well. And if you love it and you need some cards for it, consider getting them from my sponsor, TOAmagic.com. Promo code ThrabenU will save you a little bit on your order, and you always get free shipping on every single order that you place online. What's not to like there? So, let's battle. Okay, this is a hand that has lands and spells. We have 2 lands, but this is a little sketchy. I could, on turn 1, put this in, roll cycle, and then turn 2, make land drop, go Dark Grit, 5 mana, 6 mana wasteland, cast a troll. I'm in a rough shape versus Daze or Swords to Plowshares. If I do that, I will have Orcish Bowmasters as backup. I could actually lead on wasteland. It's a little sketch to keep this. It is doing something powerful. Borderline keep here. I could lead on wasteland on 1. I think I'm gonna lead on this and pass turn. If this gets wastelanded, I will still just pick up another swamp. Well, don't chalice me, don't chalice me, don't chalice me, don't do it, don't do it, don't. Fuck! Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. Notably, my deck is excellent versus Chalice of the Void in all normal instances. draw out of this. It's fine. It's fine. Narrator's voice. It was not fine. Note that we do have outs to Chalice of the Void. I can... Oh, it is Eldrazi. I can just draw a Karn the Great Creator, and then just plus on the Chalice, and then reanimate for Troll is live. But we might just get run over by Eldrazi in the interim. It really depends on how important that Ancient Tomb was specifically to my opponent's hand. All right. I am going to try to hit that in combat, rather than play out Bowmaster immediately. If my opponent goes for pushing some damage, and I get to take out a Glaring Fleshraker, that's actually really, really huge for me. All right, fuck yeah. This is big. Let's ping that directly, I think. I think I am okay with this. A removal spell on this orc could stop me from removing Glaring Fleshraker, though. I think I like having the Bowmaster in play later, because the Bowmaster is very good against things like the One Ring and Kozilek's Command that can come afterwards. So this Chalice of the Void has fucked me up. We are still absolutely drawing live. Karn is still fine. Beseech the Mirror is still fine. You could draw both pieces of Leyline Helm over a couple of turns. That is a Thought-Knot Seer. What are my removal options here? One of them is going to miss Thought-Knot Seer, right? Yes. I will still probably end up playing it because Glaring Fleshraker is a problem. I'll take 2. Oh, sorry about that. I took 2 damage and then I got Wastelanded. At this point, I am taking 6 damage in the combat step. I don't think I'm interested in Wastelanding my opponent. I think I just need to have my own lands in play. Yavimaya. It's a kicked Sowing Mycospawn. That's real bad for me. So now I'm going to lose at least Swamp. If I were the opponent in this position, I would be perfectly fine just getting a Wasteland, snapping Wasteland off on Wasteland, and pressing my onboard advantage. We'll see if my opponent agrees. Yeah, there is the Wasteland. So I'm at 10 after that trigger. And then 9 after this one. Gain 4 life. I am at 7. Okay, so I think not Wastelanding this Wasteland is a misplay because it gives me the opportunity to do things like potentially Beseech the Mirror or other 4-mana plays. My opponent, like, literally does not need to cast another spell the rest of this game to likely beat me from this position. So Wastelanding an active opposing Wasteland is normally not a play that you want to take, but in this specific instance, I think it is very, very good to do so. Yeah, so normally we would get into the mid-range of casting these sorts of cards and we would not care about Chalice of the Void, but Chalice was so good against us that specific game. So my opponent will have a few outs to an Ensnaring Bridge to physically remove it. Sick Brain here is blanking on the name, but the 2-mana green-blue Eldrazi with like the kicker stuff can physically remove the Ensnaring Bridges. And they also don't care that much about them because you also can just fully kill through Bridge with Glaring Fleshraker and Kozilek's Return. Sorry, Kozilek's Command. Got a few ways that I can go in sideboarding here. I am not the most interested in Karn. Karn for Bridge is slow and has the aforementioned problems. I think that's going to go. I think I'm going to bring in a bridge to tutor for off Beseech the Mirror, but not go crazy with it, because a lot of times I would like to just hit my opponent approximately 3 times with a troll to end the game. I could go down on some 1-drops if I wanted to get better against Chalice. I'm not the most excited about that. I'm not the most excited about Orcish Bowmasters. The biggest thing that it is doing here is giving me tokens for Beseech the Mirror. And that does matter. I think this is going to be a time where I don't eliminate any one specific card, but I bring in a few copies of a couple of cards. And I think I'm going to bring in the extra land, given that it's Wasteland City over there. Pithing Needle on Wasteland, I think, is also playable. I don't know that I'm the most excited about it. I don't think this hand is going anywhere meaningful. Swamp from Mux, Imprint, Fel the Profane, Dark Ritual into Beseech the Mirror on turn 1, which is a little awkward, actually, without A Leyline or Dauthi? This is where I would love a card like Sholdred. I'm going to confirm that I took that Karn out real quick. I did take that Karn out. Maybe I should have brought the One Ring in when I did that. I don't think this is great. This is fine. This is 5 cards. So land, troll, reanimate, for sure. And if we're doing that, the Leyline side of the equation becomes less important. If I'm getting 1 more land, I can probably get rid of a vault here. This is putting 6 power into play on turn 2, unless Chalice of the Void happens, in which case our hand kind of gets bricked off again, unfortunately. Damn it. So now this is where we hope to draw the Dauthis and the cards of that nature. Is not happening. Is just not lining up well for us. Opponent has plenty of mana, unfortunately. Yikes. Wastegate Battle Mage was the card that I was thinking of earlier. Absolutely punishing. Now I don't get immediate long goodbye. Maybe not that I would long goodbye Wastegate Battle Mage anyway. That's not the best prospects for us. Thought-Knots here as a follow-up to take my only live card is pretty rough. I think we are going to get run over here. I'll be at 18, which means that this is exactly a 3-turn clock from here. I'm going to go ahead and just do this to make Swamp my land drop for turn. Not play something that is wastelandable. Green source into Sowing Mycospawn is a somewhat real concern as of right now. I think we're just stomped. Yeah, so if I had Karn in my deck, hypothetically, my opponent probably ends up just exiling that or otherwise taking it from my hand. Well, unless it, yeah, if it goes into play, my opponent can just kick it. Not great for me. I'm going to take 6 here. I am at 6. And my opponent has a One Ring of their own. Given that I'm already dead to the stuff on board, the One Ring is probably insurmountable here. And I think despite the fact that we have a very decent number of plays versus Chalice of the Void, we just got absolutely skunked by it. GG's.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is, in my opinion, the best Magic the Gathering website for hosting your deck lists online. One of my favorite features is that you can create your own custom tags for when you're deck building. So let's say you're building a commander deck and you want to know, hey, how many copy effects do I have? You can just create a tag and sort everything, and there's fun little hotkeys so that you can do this more quickly. So really, please consider checking them out if you are looking to tinker with deck lists online.
All right, hand looks great here. Oh no, we are playing against Eldrazi again. Although perhaps a more ramp-oriented version than last time. Let's go into exile here. Okay, cool. Cavern on Eldrazi. So, I know that my opponent has Devourer of Destiny in hand. So, I think the way that I'm going to play this is just put a threat into play on turn 1. We're going to go ahead and Dark Ritual. Thoughtseize my opponent, take the biggest, largest Eldrazi we can from their hand, and reanimate it. So that is going to be the Devourer of Destiny here. And let's reanimate that. I have a 6/6 in play, and I can try to wasteland my opponent's lands. I don't think that they are in a position where they can realistically wasteland me back, because I have this threat in play here. But they disagree. I'm going to go ahead and bash in for 6 here, put them to 14, and now I have to decide whether or not I want to wasteland Cavern of Souls. I would much prefer to wasteland Eldrazi Temple, but I think I am going to go ahead and just wasteland Cavern of Souls immediately. The reason being that I don't want my opponent to get to that 3rd mana to be able to make a spawn with this Kozilek's command. They don't want them to be able to go spawn into Kozilek's command and either block with that or use that to put Thought-Knots here into play. And I would like to play this land here specifically, because this could be taken by a Thought-Knot Seer if my opponent top decks another soul land here. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that my opponent lost that one when they chose to wasteland me. It's also possible that it was correct to play Eldrazi Temple and just cycle this as a 2-mana spell, taking no additional value. Less sure on that one. Okay, so how do we want to approach this one? I was running into Chalice of the Void kicking my ass last round. I still conceptually like Thoughtseize. I think it is important to punch a hole and buy a little time. I think Thoughtseize is kind of an all or nothing thing. I don't think you trim Thoughtseizes in a lot of cases. Last time I ran into not having a great Beseech target for a turn 1 Beseech. I think I'm gonna put the One Ring in the deck for that specifically. And then I've got some choices regarding removal and 2-drops and Thoughtseize. I think I am going to do something like what I did before and go up 1 land while playing a couple of removal spells. It's possible that I should not Long Goodbye because it misses too many relevant things. And I should instead just keep something else that punches the hand in 1 more Token Producer, or 1 Pithing Needle, or 1 Ensnaring Bridge. Well, as long as our opponent doesn't get out in front of us on turn 1, we can probably punch a hell of a hole in this hand. Leyline of the Void. Well, I don't have the Reanimate style stuff this time. Thoughtseize is now going under Chrome Mox, which is fine. Chrome Mox. Imprint the 1-drop, that is off, and fire off a him on our opponent. We take double Grim Monolith. Okay, so there's my confirmation that my opponent is on a much, much bigger build than our previous opponent was. Lotus Petal and Glaring Fleshraker. I, in theory, have an answer to that in my hand. Okay, so I can go ahead and Swamp Cycle, pick up a Swamp. And then I have a difficult choice. I can take the 1 card that remains in my opponent's hand, or I can set up to always cast the 1 ring next turn. I think since my opponent is on a single land here, I am going to go ahead and just take that. It is a Disruptor Flute, which actually would have been a very, very relevant card. I may now not end up... another Chalice on 1? I am not sure if I like another Chalice on 1 more than I like Chalice on 0. I think I just don't want Glaring Fleshraker alive. I think I'm going to take 1 turn off from doing 1 ring nonsense to just take out that creature and make it so that there's a higher likelihood of cards getting stuck in my opponent's hand over the course of this game. And then I think I will drop the 1 ring and start going to town. I think that is a perfectly fine investment of resources. So we get our protection, we draw a card, and pass the turn. And we're probably going to play Draw-Go for a couple of turns, but I think in a way that is very, very favorable to me. Thought-Knot Seer is great for my opponent. They're not really taking... Well, they're literally not taking a card here because of the 1 ring trigger. But even if they could take the Thoughtseize, that's not really relevant. Sure... I think we are fine with blowing up my opponent's mana production and taking a couple of points of damage here to put something that walls Thought-Knot Seer onto the board. I kill my opponent in 2 attack steps. My opponent will kill me in approximately the same amount of time due to my 1 ring. That's not a live card. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. So bam, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is fine to do. Send it. Opponent's at 6. All right, that was a pretty quick 2-0. That felt much better. Maybe my previous match goes better if I just leave the 1 ring in as something to beseech for. Obviously slightly different builds, this one being a little bit bigger and less aggressive than the previous build, but always learning, you know? Okay, we've got a slightly awkward one here. We have 2 mana, and I have Thoughtseize and Bowmasters as playable cards. My Hymn to Turok is not castable. I could potentially Thoughtseize an opposing threat and then reanimate it. But I think overall I'm not in love with this hand, and I think we can do better. This is a pretty medium hand as well. So I think on 6 I am going to keep it. I think this is roughly on the power level of the previous hand with slightly more upside overall. So we start on a Leyline. I will go Swamp. I will Chrome Mox. Imprint, Fell the Profane. And after my opponent's mulligan, we will cast a Hymn to Turok. And this is a very, very... Oh, spicy. Anyway, the Hymn to Turok there is going to be a very, very high variance play because it could hit some lands and just instantly end the game, or we could kind of whiff on that stuff and not actually do anything meaningful. Ooh, that's real good for us. This is exactly the sort of thing that we want to draw. Now I am just going to need another mana source here. Although Pithing Needle can kind of fuck my shit up. Actual Factual Arcbound Ravager. Fuck yeah. Alright, so I have missed on mana here. So I am unsure whether or not my opponent will go for a Pithing Needle. They might need other things to get their own game plan going here. Like, I was thinking that something like a Mox would not be unsurprising there. I'll take a little from a Ravager, and hopefully I get to Helm. Alright, 2 cards left in my opponent's hand, so that's real good. Zabaz! Yeah, no, spicy. So there's probably going to be like the Hangerback Walker type cards. We may see green mana for some sort of hardened scales effect. And hopefully we don't just draw mono 4-drops for the rest of the game and die. That happens sometimes. We'll take a little damage here. And Ornithopters can be converted into damage at some point. Ooh, yeah. Are Ornithopters being converted yet? No. Am I dead next turn? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not dead yet. But the top card of my opponent's deck might do it. Oh wait, I don't think I counted sacrificing Springleaf Drum. So 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it is fully does my opponent draw another artifact in their artifact-themed deck. That is another Arcbound Ravager. That is going to do it. Between the direct damage from Glaring Fleshbreakers and sacrificing for Arcbound Ravager, my opponent has it easily at this point. So there's a couple of sacrifices to just fuel up the power, and we are a single mana short of closing this one out, unfortunately. So my hand disruption is not going to be the best here. My opponent's deck is very low to the ground, and they can deploy a lot of stuff relatively quickly. So I think I'm going to be going down some amount of this stuff. And this is probably going to be a time where we will bring in those Karns. They are going to be high impact here. Let's see what it looks like if I get rid of all of the discard. I go up on the Karns, I play 4 spot removal spells, and then maybe one of these two. There was a time where decks like this just fucking lost to Ensnaring Bridge. But now Glaring Fleshbreaker's an asshole. And makes it so that Ensnaring Bridge just does not shut down these fair creature decks until they draw one of their few outs to it. I'm still going to put a bridge into the deck to tutor for. So I'm going to keep this hand, and I'm going to do a play that you are legally allowed to do in Legacy, which is not put your Leyline of the Void into play when it is in your opening hand. I think this is just a time where I want this mana from Leyline of the Void more than I want the combo out. My plan here is just draw a mana source in the next 2 turns to deploy a Karn and hope that it shuts down my opponent's deck. And the Karn can get me a 1 ring from the sideboard or an Ensnaring Bridge from the sideboard and do some solid work here. I didn't run the exact numbers, but I imagine we are at roughly 50% mana in this deck. That tends to be the case. Alright, no way for me to immediately use my Sheoldred's Edict for mana. That's another Karn. 3 of a kind. I am not interested in wastelanding Inkmoth Nexus. I just need this 4th mana. Another Inkmoth. Straight up activating an Inkmoth. Sure. I mean, please sacrifice a non-token creature. I am good with this result. So it feels to me like my opponent was trying to bait the wasteland. Maybe because something like an Urza's Saga is coming next, or maybe because they think I need to cast 4-drops. Fuck! So, while I can legally imprint a Karn, that is not going to do what I want it to do. No covered... Okay, there's the hardened scales that I had predicted previously. Alright. Now I have more mana. So let's go ahead and Karn. I think we are okay to just Karn minus here. And I think I am into the One Ring. And if my opponent uses a bunch of resources to somehow kill Karn, I don't think that's the end of the world for me. So Arcbound Ravager entering with an additional +1/+1 counter due to hardened scales. Let's play the One Ring. I will get protection from everything. Notably, my Planeswalker won't have protection from everything, though. Let's go ahead and just Karn plus, kill a Mox Opal. I'm going to leave a Wasteland chilling here. I don't think I am going to Wasteland my opponent. I think I can make better use of my mana than they can. Because I would like to be able to do things like Leyline Helm. And Helm plus Activate is going to require 5 mana. If my opponent boots up, 2 copies of Inkmoth Nexus and starts swinging in, I might fire off 1 Wasteland. What do you think the chances are that there's like Legolas's quick reflexes? Moderate? That's something that could have been why my opponent attacked into open mana previously. I think I will do this. Karn being at 2 versus Karn being at 4 is different. Hey, there we go. Alright, so Karn's loyalty goes down. Ooh, Haywire Mite's so good here. So good. So my opponent had another Inkmoth Nexus. Is there some way that they can leave up green? I guess there is. Let's draw some cards before I do anything else here. Ooh. If I'm willing to get rid of Leyline, I can just do both of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imprint Leyline 6. A long goodbye 1. My opponent can have their 2 life. I will Spell the Profane the next one. I will Karn plus on nothing. And if my opponent uses their entire turn to attack and kill this Karn, I still have 2 more cards and a 1 ring on 2 counters. So I think this is fine for me overall. All right, activate. Yeah, no, just super quick. They know that this Karn is a problem. It's dead. It's coming right back. My opponent doesn't know that yet, but it is. Bowmaster's not bad either. Ooh. Helm is fine for just a touch later. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Play a Karn, Wasteland, and Urza's Saga. I'm going to change how I'm going to do this, actually. I'm going to just grab Pithing Needle here. I'm going to put Pithing Needle on Inkmoth Nexus. I was originally planning on just Dark Ritual, Orcish Bowmaster, ping one of those, but I guess stopping both of them at the same time is pretty clutch. A Ravager. That's fine. I'm probably reaching the point of the game where I am doing cooler things. Draw a bunch of cards. Okay, so there's Leyline and Helm. How much mana do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 is not 9. That's probably fine, though. We can do this over 2 turns. Let's go ahead and just do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to play this so I don't discard. And then on my next turn, I will just Helm and activate for the win, assuming my opponent doesn't like Pithing Needle me. Alright, yep, that'll do. Alright, that is going at my face. I am fine just trading for the creature here. Although, honestly, it doesn't really matter. I take some damage from the 1 ring. And we Helm. And there's the concession. Karn's put a lot of pressure on my opponent, despite the fact that the Karns weren't the best here. Like, my opponent had a bunch of land and mana, but the fact that Karn was stopping Haywire Mite and Arcbound Ravager from going wild was just good enough on its own there. There's still some small tweaks that I could make here. I could put the Pithing Needle in the main deck to naturally draw it, rather than have it as a Karn tutor target. I think I like having all 3 of these cards as tutor targets, and Ensnaring Bridge as like a quaternary thing that I can go and pick up. I could board in a Vault of Whispers. I honestly don't know what I would be taking out for it. This seems fine. I could take out a Bowmaster for it, and that would be perfectly okay as well. Not enough mana? Feels like not enough mana. I have 2 mana here. I can't empty my hand for Ensnaring Bridge. Sacrificing artifacts for Beseech the Mirror is a little rough. I think we can do better than this. This is fine. Deals a lot of damage to me. But we're going Troll Reanimate, I think, is the plan here. Maybe that's not true. Maybe we're going Dauthi. 3, 5 initial damage plus another 6 from Reanimate is a lot. Maybe we're not doing the sexy thing here, and we are going for Dauthi into Helm. I think that's probably safer. See how this goes. Springleaf Drum, and Zabaz, and Ornithopter. Sure. That's a Karn. So I'm going to deal 3 to myself and pass the turn. We are most scared of something that produces a large amount of power. Urza's Saga is a large amount of power, but it's hopefully slow. Like, I would be more afraid of, like, Hardened Scales Ravager this turn, for example. I'll take 1, and we're chilling. I Swamp Cycle, pick up Swamp. Okay. I'm just going to think for a minute about whether or not I need to long goodbye this. I do not think that I do. I think I can just ram this out there and have Dark Ritual as an out to kill next turn. Oh? You're gonna Metallic Rebuke me? What's happening? Metallic Rebuke kind of fucks my shit up if that's the case. Oh. No, it is just physically draw a card. That's fine. Veil of Summer is meant to be this, like, protection / pseudo counterspell thing, but sometimes when margins are tight on games, you just need to physically go and just draw the card and try to get deeper into your deck. Keen Sense. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. I mean, my creature has Shadow, so yeah, you're getting in there. Interesting. Oh, I see. So the idea is that this plus Glaring Fleshraker kills, right? So Glaring Fleshraker deals 1 to you, you draw a card. Yeah, okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. I've seen that with Curiosity before. So since my opponent made this creature already, I think I'm kind of into just long goodbying this card and hoping that my opponent doesn't Pithing Needle a Helm and just save some life in the short term. And then next turn, I just go Helm and activate in 1 go. And then, like, so hopefully instead of getting Pithing Needle for Helm here, my opponent goes and gets, say, Lava Spur Boots to crash in for a bunch of damage. I don't think Lava Spur Boots is keeping me off of double Ancient Tomb. Ooh, it is a Mox. Keen Sense is good tech. I like this a lot. Hardened Scales. I will take 1. My opponent gets to draw a card. I could still get got by some sort of Dismember type card. Hopefully that does not happen. So cast. We're going to try to go ahead and activate here for X equals 1 and see if our opponent dies. I think it's correct to do so now rather than let them get more cards, or sorry, more mana in their own turn. And opponent trolls us a little bit by tapping some mana, but they don't have it. So we are now 2-1, going positive. Okay, hand is perfectly solid here. I'm going to keep this one. We can Thoughtseize on turn 1 into Troll Reanimate on 2. This is perfectly fine. So let's see what's going on over there. Windswept Heath is often an indicator of a fair Mavericky style deck, but Nadu makes a lot of sense. If I don't take Nomads, I can just die. I can just die if my opponent is a luck sack and either naturally draws or surveil lands into a Cephalid Illusionist. So even though the Nomads is kind of a sad card to take, like you would love to take the 3-mana card rather than the 1-mana card, I think I need to be a responsible boy and keep the thing that take the thing that keeps me from dying immediately. My opponent's hand also might be scary enough that I am not reanimating next turn, and I am going to Troll Cycle and then Thoughtseize instead to either get Force of Will or Nadu. Thunder's out. Alright. So get new swamp. Play new swamp. And Thought sees you. Oh! Oh. Well. I see. So this is what our opponent has. Green Sun for Nadu is a thing. I think we're just fucking with the mana efficiency here and taking the Nadu. Green Sun for Nadu is more mana than just cast Nadu. I am unsure whether opponent's patience in not casting Force of Will is a good or bad thing. I just don't have enough experience on the other side of the matchup here to know. Alright. So, since I have 2 reanimates, I'm going to lead on a reanimate here and give my opponent a chance to Force of Will this. I would love for them to Force of Will this. They don't. So now they're going to fire off yet another Thoughtseize. Okay. And they finally bite. I wanted them to bite on the reanimate because I had 2 of those. Fuck. That's what we did not want to see. So now the Nadu is in play. Oh, sure. 4 or 5 cards in graveyard for it. Leyline of the Void. Not exactly having perfect timing here. I hit my opponent for 6. 12 next turn does not kill them, even with a fetch. I want to Bowmaster. Bowmaster generates multiple chump blockers for Uro. I guess that's fine. We're going to go ahead and play things out at sorcery speed here, though, I think. Let's go ping, reanimate, troll. And then I've got a couple of chump blockers while attacking in for decent damage. Notably, after all of this, it is still possible to die to a combo finish. Alright, so Uro happens. Opponent gains 3, but is then going to lose 1 to Bowmaster. And I am going to have him to Turok to punch through these 2 cards. Ponder's fine. We get another Bowmaster ping. As long as opponent is above 12, it doesn't matter what their exact life total is. Alright, there's removal spell number 1. That's scary. Opponent now has no cards in hand. I can die to a top deck removal spell. I'm going in. Opponent is at 2, dies to either one of these. I'm going to play this tapped and pass the turn. And we see if we die. Alright, so we dodged the initial removal spell test. So opponent can still A plus B combo, right? 3 mana Nadu, 1 mana Nomads. Like, it is still possible. The swords does not save them. The swords their own thing or my thing. So they do need to stop both trolls. New Ponder. That Ponder is presumably looking at some bad cards, so a shuffle is likely here. Oh, and we barely get our ass over the line on that one. Alright, I don't like this matchup, I don't think. We interacted very frequently with our opponent, and it was still very scary. Ignoring Uro, like if my opponent had just put a Nadu in play, that situation is still terrifying. As usual, I have no idea how to board against Nadu. I could go up on Karn because Nadu interacts with Shuko. I'm not excited about that prospect. Ensnaring Bridge is nothing more than a speed bump versus my opponent. I'm not super interested in that. I think I want both Long Goodbye and Shoulder's Edict at minimum. My opponent's deck might be redundant enough that the Thoughtseizes and Hymn to Turoks aren't actually that good. I think I'm going to get rid of the hymns for being slower. I'm just going to change these for these directly. I want this Pithing Needle, but I am having trouble conceptualizing what I get rid of for it. My density of Dauthis matter for my combo speed. My Bowmasters matter as additional removal spells and just generic anti-blue stuff. So I think the Needle is staying as a Karn tutor target, and I think I'm keeping 1 Karn to help find the One Ring or Pithing Needle or whatever. This hand doesn't actually really do much. It has a good mix of lands and spells, but unless Bowmasters is good, this hand does not do anything. And if my opponent plays exile-based removal and I don't get to reanimate my own Bowmaster, this is really unimpressive. I'm going to go down here. This is very similar to the last hand, but on 6 I might be a little bit less picky. We'll open up with the Leyline in play. The Leyline is relatively unimpressive itself. Wonders are fine. I think in this matchup, I will be trading mana relatively aggressively. Despite the fact that I do want to get to 4 or 5 mana for my own game, my opponent getting to higher mana amounts is scary because Nadu and Green Sun for Nadu starts becoming live. So I think I will 1-for-1 trade for non-basic lands as many times in a row as I can. If my opponent plays a mana dork, it starts to get trickier. That was a very fast shuffle. Yeah, especially drawing another land here. Just take those trades. My opponent is casting cantrips under my Bowmaster, which is not great for me. Ooh, yeah, no, they've got land. Okay, there's the mana dork. So now this is where this gets awkward. Because I now don't... My early mana denial is not going to stop my opponent from potentially casting a Nadu this turn now. Ground Seal, sure. Okay, my opponent has now cantripped 3 or 4 times. Just completely around my Bowmaster, unfortunately. That also shuffles. Dark Ritual. Not gonna do anything with that. I'm just gonna pass the turn. I have the option to Fell the Profane. Bristly Bill. You've got it. There's a Lush Portico, and Bristly Bill is going to put some counters on Delighted Halfling. That's fine. So that is a 2/3 creature. I think it's pretty likely that my opponent cantrips some more. I'm going to go ahead and send this at face and just do a chump block here and intend on using my turn to Fell the Profane Bristly Bill. So land sort of awkwardly costs me a Dark Ritual. Fell the Profane Bristly Bill. Attack for 1. Unfortunately, my Leyline is keeping me from reanimating my opponent's Bristly Bill here, which I think I absolutely would do. I'll take 2 on the backswing from this Delighted Halfling. And hopefully we don't die. Did not immediately die. That's good. I'll Thoughtseize. Double Swords to Plowshares. Understood. And pass the turn. Nomads in Core. Better than it looks. The ability here is surprisingly frustrating within combat. Yeah, so I will take 2 damage here. And I am a top deck away from dead at any given time. My reanimates are butt here. And our opponent is fetching, getting to Surveil. Yeah, the reanimates both have no targets, and Ground Seal is also a thing. Just double whammy. Delighted Halfling, just absolutely repeatedly punching me in the face. Halflings, of course, known for their violence. So, a Dark Ritual or a Soul Land becomes very good here. I'm going to keep taking damage and hoping that our opponent draws blanks. So I will Swamp Cycle, get a swamp, play a swamp, and pass the turn. So the unfortunate thing here is that it's somewhat likely my opponent has a counterspell in hand, right? If they are not drawing things that are like Nadus, it's possible they are holding back cantrips that they are not casting. That's tough. I can hold this up to interact while a Nadu is on the stack. I can use that to bash Delighted Halfling. I don't think I'm going to play Helm immediately. That is a Nadu. So while that is on the stack, I'm going to go ahead and long goodbye Nomads in Core. There is a Veil of Summer. So, let's make our opponent do a thing here. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, right. No, that has already been drawn, so now they are already hexproof. Sorry. Oop. Oh, right. It's you and permanents you control. So I need to target myself here. All right. So long goodbye, despite the fact that it can't be countered, is countered by it being removed from the stack. So my opponent now is very, very likely to win the game or otherwise find enough things that stop me from doing what I'm doing so that they're good to go. I am glad that I held up long goodbye. Tapping out for Helm would mean that I didn't even have the chance to try and stop this. There's a Green Sun for Dryad Arbor, which is going to give my opponent 2 more attempts here. So they have a bunch of swords type stuff. Oh, okay. Boseiju is in play rather than in hand. I guess that's good for me. Let's save some individual amounts of life here. Individual points of life, rather. And then hope to draw a land. Okay. So, is there also a counter spell on top of all of this? We didn't see it, but there's a decent chance that it was in my opponent's hand. Eh? Eh? Okay, they're gonna do the thing again. They get a lot of looks. I'm just gonna yield to all this shit. Still no hits after a couple more activations. Yield to this too. Still no hits. Eh? There's hope. At this point, I am legitimately wondering if my opponent has boarded out their counter spells for this matchup. March? Does March do it? Well, I mean, I am dead on board regardless. So, I guess March, and you just do that for x equals 5. Or sorry, x equals 4. And then regardless of whether or not I do that now or later, that beats me. Yeah. Then just confirming I block this, take 3, 4, 5, and 6. I am dead. Well, damn. I could take one more. I could make some small adjustments like this for this to get that on Nomads early. All the Prismatic Ending, March of Otherworldly Light to Fairy type cards just mean that that's not super relevant, though. I don't feel the best about that. I might just keep Karn as a tutor target. This deck is just so incredibly redundant. This is fine. We'd prefer not to hit Graveyard Hate in the first turn cycle. Like, that would be cool. I would love to actually reanimate a troll and get a hit or two in with that. See where this goes. Oh, that's fine. It does mean that my opponent can potentially now do next turn, though, which is, like, very much not the best for me. So we will go ahead and reanimate a troll, and I'm going to leave up troll cycling for another one. Fuck, that is the Nadu. Oh, shit, it's Teferi instead. That's annoying, but I can finish that off with a Bowmaster. That's not the end of the world. Does make my job harder. Ooh. Now I can have 5 mana. Okay. 5 mana is cool. So let's attempt Bowboy. Finish off that Teferi. Then I will 2 mana for Voidwalker and pass the turn. We are working towards a Karn Helm kill here. But I can die this turn to Nadu plus Nomads. Dodged. That's fantastic for me. So we continue to Swamp Cycle. Pick up a new Swamp. Is that better than playing Karn? I might be on an awkward tempo game here, where I do something like this, and just try to 5-5-5-5 my opponent. Swords Bowmaster. Sure. Veil of Summer. Annoying. Okay. Send in for 3. We have some options with Dauthi now. Maybe it's possible I should hold Dauthi back. I don't really want to sacrifice Dauthi, though, because after that line happened, I'm more likely to end this game via combo. Like, the... Fuck. So if I lose... Hypothetically, let's say I lose Dauthi to take out Nomads in core in response to this Nadu on the stack. My Karn alone, I think, does not have the best options to actually win the game here. I think after my opponent revealing this many cards, I'm just going to accept the fact that I am likely dead here. GG's. Okay. I have Troll Reanimate as a thing that I am starting with, which seems fine. We've got Delta on the other side of the table. So if this is a blue-black Reanimator matchup, we could have something really awkward happen where my Reanimate is countered and then my opponent reanimates my Troll. And that would make me sad. That's about the best possible fucking draw in the entire deck right there. We have a response. It is Underground Sea, and it is a Brainstorm. Holy hell. Fuck me. So, I'm just dead if my opponent's top card is an Animate Dead or Reanimate, which would be the sort of thing that I would be hiding if I was on the other side of the battlefield. This hand is so strong, even with what I can see here. Double Force of Will, Brazen Borrower to bounce a Troll, Force of Will to counter a Reanimate, Entomb plus potentially Reanimate on top of my opponent's library to get an Archon or whatever. I think I'm taking Brazen Borrower, as that is the card that 1-for-1 answers my Reanimate. And we'll see if my opponent even wants to Force of Will this. It's possible that they just have an Archon of Cruelty with Entomb plus Reanimate, and they just don't need to counter this. Okay, that's Force pitching Force. So these are all gone. So we will see if I was prescient and my opponent reanimates my own Troll. or if we get Entomb plus Reanimate, or if there needs to be a Ponder setup turn. We shall see. Don't have an artifact for Beseech the Mirror right now, or a token to pay the bargain cost. Was that Entomb? That was a very quickly cast Entomb. That's a Traxa. And a fetch. Yeah, that's the Reanimate. And everybody is on the Valvagoth train now. I've seen this card a lot in the last couple of days, after basically never seeing it since Duskmourn's release. Wow, that was not actually a very good Valvagoth, or sorry, Atraxa. They got Brainstorm, Troll, Polluted Delta out of all of that. So I can, in theory, answer Atraxa next turn, but my opponent gets a couple of cantrips in all likelihood to get there. Go ahead and just cross this stuff off. Game is basically hedging on whether or not the Fel the Profane resolves next turn. Alright, there's a Ponder, and we know that my opponent also has a Brainstorm as well. They are going to get a decent number of looks at protection for this Atraxa. That's no shuffle. That's probably not good for me. I'm not going to give my opponent another draw here. I'm going to go ahead and fire this off now. That is a Force of Will, unfortunately. And I think at this point, I can no longer win. I could, I guess, technically rip another Fel the Profane off the top, kill Atraxa, and my opponent just has a hand of bricks. But I find that unlikely. I'm also not going to have a lot of life as wiggle room, and my opponent will be above their starting life total as well. Not great. We've got a Brainstorm and a Thoughtseize. So we need top deck removal spell for Atraxa. And if opponent would not have Force of Will plus blue card left over, that would be great. Yeah, I think Beseech the Mirror is obviously the take there, despite the fact that I don't currently have an artifact to sacrifice for it. That is not going to do it. We die to Atraxa in the air. GG's. Leyline of the Void deck gets stomped by Reanimator. So, Ensnaring Bridge is a neat card, but my opponent is playing things like Brazen Borrower in the main deck that can naturally bounce those. I think I am interested in having access to Ensnaring Bridge, and I just have to decide whether or not I want, like, how much access I want to it. I have to worry about Goyfs as well. So I could bring in one bridge and leave one bridge to Karn tutor for. Karn is kind of slow here. My Thoughtseizes sure didn't feel good. My opponent's hand was just so redundant. What does it look like if I don't play discard against the combo deck? We might be going into crazy territory here, but like, I can play 4 more outs to a Goyf. I can bring in a bridge to Beseech for, and I could play more Karns to tutor for bridge. Maybe I still need Thoughtseize. Just like trim 1 Bowmaster. Then I keep some amount of real discard. Nope. That does not have a plan to win. Okay. I gotta figure this one out. It's a keep. The Chromox imprint Dauthi, Fel the Profane, cast Dauthi, turn 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go. But I'm losing a card. Is this fine without the Dark Ritual? Or alternatively, do I ignore Helm and try to just double Dauthi my way to victory? Just ignore Helm, Chromox, imprint, Fel the Profane. No, I don't have 4 black pips on 1. That would be 3 black pips. What about a middle ground? Chromox, imprint this, play this, cast, get rid of Ancient Tomb, draw mana eventually. Then I just have turn 1 Dauthi into turn 2 Dauthi with a combo backup plan. I think I like that. It's weird, but I think I'm game for that. Yeah, yes. Kind of the issue no matter what is, I think, 1 Force of Will is incredibly good. So if, for example, the Dauthi Voidwalker is Force of Willed and my opponent entombs while the second Dauthi Voidwalker is on the stack, they dodge my double Graveyard Hate opener. We've got a Flooded Strand and immediate fetch. Basic Island, which probably means Ponder. Glad we don't get Thoughtseized. An opponent likes their cards. Alright, Karn, not castable. Throwing away the Ancient Tomb from the opener is going to have consequences like that. But the plan is fair beatdown while shutting off the graveyard. And, like, the Helm is secondary. That was very, very clearly the plan based on the mulligan decisions. Thoughtseize is not bad. Well, let's do that pre-combat while keeping these Dauthis untapped. Bowmaster's fine. Hanging a Dauthi? Why? So I could convert a Dauthi Voidwalker into a troll. The trolls can be blocked by Bowmaster, Orc Army token. I don't actually think I like that. There's no animate dead targets currently. I think I am just taking the Ponder and leaving my opponent with all that black stuff that's not doing anything. I'm just going to try to 3-turn clock my opponent with Dauthi Voidwalkers here. Yeah, I believe that my opponent had no reason to ping Dauthi Voidwalker. Maybe they forgot it had Shadow or something, I don't know. Alright, so they are at 10. They have a bunch of dead draws. They have a Wasteland that can take out my Felmire, but like I'm kind of already all in on these Dauthi Voidwalkers, so that's sort of whatever. We do not want to see a Goyf come down. So my opponent just showed me the card that they drew, so I know the exact contents of their hand still. So they can attack me for 3 here by playing another Orcish Bowmasters in combat, which they did not do. Assuming that Bowmasters is their plan for mana, that feels like missed damage. I'll go ahead and send in with these here. Opponent goes to 4. I will play out a Wasteland to attempt to disincentivize my opponent from using a Surveil land here. Yeah, so my opponent missed damage by not doing that Bowmaster in combat. So I am at 12. I could be at 10 instead. My opponent missed 1 by pinging Dauthi Voidwalker, and then missed another by not Bowmastering in combat. Alright, so they are still going for the Surveil land. They have junked a Thoughtseize. So I think the game is over if I get another turn without my opponent doing something crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and junk this. It might keep my opponent from cantripping into another thing. I think we're going to game 3 now. Alright, we are. So we've still seen Animate Dead. We've still seen Bowmasters. We didn't see Goyf. I could, like, not Beseech and try to lower my curve. Thing like him to Turok back into my deck. Medium on that. I do not believe that I have cast a Beseech in this entire league. Maybe 1. And I had that one opening hand where I had it, but it just wasn't good based on how I had boarded. This is fine. This is also probably fine. So, Chromox, Imprint, Beseech. Cannot Dauthi on turn 1 as of right now. I think that's okay still. I have the Leyline to start with. And it's just Island and Pass. That's fine for me. Oh? That's interesting. So on 5 mana, I have Beseech the Mirror Helm activate as a thing that matters. I think I'm not going to imprint anything this turn. I think I'm just going to play Wasteland and Pass and Troll Cycle. I would prefer to cast something that baits a counter spell before I cast a Beseech. Because Beseeching with Bargain is going to cost me my Chrome Mox. A little annoying to me that I need to Troll Cycle here to fix my mana, because it's giving my opponent reanimation targets after I use Leyline. And now we've got a thinking moment from my opponent, and they just pass the turn. So they might have Bowmaster available. They might have Brazen Borrower available. You get Swamp. Sure. This game's awkward now, because I don't want to cast Beseech and try to win, because I think it gets countered. But I think I want to Dauthi. Putting Dauthi into play also just means that Brazen Borrower bounce on Leyline isn't going to stop my stuff anymore. I'm not sure whether or not I actually want to keep that Dark Ritual. Hey, it is Petty Theft, which is why I wanted that Dauthi Voidwalker in play. Now, with Dauthi in play, we are not just immediately getting reanimated on. Well, okay. Not the scary ones, anyway. Yeah, this is why I didn't really want to cycle troll, but, you know. Now we are on a more real clock, and I haven't, I think, done something that baits Force of Will yet. It's making these Beseeches increasingly more awkward. Very hard for me to try to Beseech twice here. What's in here? Just reanimate. So I think I am trying to play a tempo game for as long as I can, and Beseech becomes plan B. All the profane on this troll is very good, but I think this is a land. Our clocks are going to be similar. I get this first attack here. My opponent is at 11, so I am currently ahead as far as clock is concerned. I will have my opponent dead in 2 combat steps. It takes my opponent 4 combat steps. Less if Brazen Borrower gets involved. Alright, I eat 6 damage to the face. I'm at 14. And now my opponent gets to sculpt their hand. They need the Fatal Push type stuff to answer the Dauthis, and they also need to be respecting a combo finish at the same time. Underground Sea. Alright, Reanimate not very strong here. I'm going to send in for 6. Petty Theft again? Petty Theft again. Sure. Opponent is at 8. I think I just recast Dauthi. That's not true, actually. 6 plus 9. I could Wasteland and recast Dauthi. I could also just jam Beseech. I think I like jam Beseech. I will sacrifice my Chrome Mox to do this. Yep. Yeah, and this was the problem with Beseech, is that if the Beseech gets countered, I'm very bad at trying again. So now I need like a Dark Ritual or a Soul Land to go off next turn. And my opponent can still replay Brazen Borrower. And 6 plus 9 is bigger than 14. The more interesting thing there is if Beseech the Mirror resolves, do you go for the win or do you just play around the Fatal Push type cards? So now I do not have a artifact, enchantment, or token for this. So what am I doing? Pondering for Ensnaring Bridge? That doesn't feel good. Is that my out? That might be my out. So let's go ahead and cast that. Nope. Shuffle. Well, the Profane is not bad. Still have problems. I could technically wait on casting this for like Force of Negation based reasons. But I think if my opponent has a counterspell, like they've got it. Yeah, that is the Force of Will. It means that I get one more turn to potentially draw an Ensnaring Bridge. I'm going to have trouble deploying cards from my hands, though, and might just die to Brazen Borrower. Yeah, because I'm at 2 here. So Reanimate is functionally off. Ancient Tomb is functionally off. A Reanimate. Not good for me. 4, 5, 6 mana. That does not get me to Beseech. Plus Bridge. Yeah. That'll do it. I can Dauthi Voidwalker, block Dauthi Voidwalker, die to Troll. And if I Beseech for a removal spell for Troll, Voidwalker still kills me. We got. So we put some wins on the board, but we did not end up positive. Alrighty. Overall thoughts on the deck list. Fine. My biggest problem here is that we're not playing this card. I think when I compare this black deck to other black decks of Legacy, I'm just so impressed by this card. Being in a black deck that has both Dark Ritual and Ancient Tomb and not playing this card somewhere in the 75 feels like a mistake to me. I just love the options that this offers decks. Beseech the Mirror did not seem like a good Magic the Gathering card today. One of those times was potentially my fault for not being familiar with exactly how the deck sideboards. But I think Beseech the Mirror is often not going to be a good standalone card. In this deck, Beseech the Mirror is great as additional copies of Leyline of the Void, of Helm of Obedience specifically. But if you do not already have a Leyline or a Dauthi Voidwalker, the Beseech the Mirror is not a very good standalone card. And if your 4 mana card cannot be a standalone win condition, that feels rough to me. We had trouble versus the Reanimator deck, despite being a Leyline of the Void Dauthi Voidwalker deck. because we are also trying to do our own troll reanimate thing in this deck to just have something objectively powerful to do in the early game. It means that we are turning on animate des and reanimates from our opponent's deck that we are trying to naturally shut off with the other cards in our deck, and that feels awkward. I am not saying that it should not be in the deck, but it certainly feels awkward. I am not sure how I feel about the Karn dance that's going on here with these additional copies of Karns. We did bring them in some rounds. They were quite powerful versus the sort of hardened scales deck that we were playing against. And if we played against a lot of other artifact-based combo decks, playing a bunch of Grim Monoliths and whatever, it would have felt fine. Overall, like, is the juice worth the squeeze with what this deck is doing? Unsure. I understand why this deck is built the way that it is. You know, with Thoughtseize, Hymns, Leylines, I think you are going to get a lot of percentage points versus combo decks by doing things like this. And there is that to like. But I think without cards like this in the 75, I think percentage points versus fair decks are going to struggle. We got wastelanded off of mana a couple of times and could not deploy 4-drops like Karns and Helms and Leylines, and that was definitely relevant. So I think I give this deck a thumbs up in competitive events and a thumbs down for more casual things like FNMs and leagues. I think, if you are going in and you are gunning for combo, like, great. But we saw versus some of those fair decks that even though in theory we have a bunch of good stuff to cast against them, in practice, sometimes this stuff getting stuck in our hands meant that we were just going to fall behind. So I wonder if, like, the Stompy matchups, like the red Stompy matchups, the Eldrazi Stompy matchups, end up being bad without something like this to help patch up some holes. Anyway, bye Barrowglyphs. Do it from TOA. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And hopefully I was not too snotty during this league. But, job's got to go on. Content's got to happen. And don't worry, I'm not sick enough that I should not be recording. Anyway, have a great rest of the day. See ya.